Hello, peeps. Welcome back in for another episode of UnMothered. Oh, man, looking for different kinds of topics to bring to you guys. Not only just in the UnMothered, but I'm going to have a guest speaker on that's a friend of mine that I met at a recent beach retreat. And she just wrote a book. I believe it's called Peace to Perfection. I'm not going to name it because I don't want to slaughter the name. Anyway, she will be on soon about talking about perfection. And she has a mommy story that kind of coincides with how she wrote this devotional. We're going to come back with a really great episode. So I try to bring different kinds of topics related to why we act the way we do with our unmothered issues, but also I'm going to be doing a whole series on the different types of mothers that we were raised by, because we tend to always say, well, my mom was an alcoholic, or my mom, 90% of the women in my unmothered Facebook group, my private group, tell me my mother was a narcissist, which could be true. But I do think that word, it gets thrown around a lot. I think I've said this before. You actually have to be diagnosed with narcissism. And narcissism, if you are a true narcissist, you are dangerous. Like it's a really crazy thing. But can your mom have narcissistic qualities? 100%, because my mom did too. So that is true, but I'm going to break down. There's a really great book I'm reading right now, and it has all the different kinds of toxic personalities that a mom can have. And it's by a psychologist, and it's Susan Forward. And she takes case studies and breaks these different types down. And so I've been reading through that book, and then I'm writing these episodes to show you how different ones will fit into maybe what your mom was, instead of just like an alcoholic. It's like, well, what's behind that? Like, what kind of personality was she, and why was she drinking like that? Why was she selfish? Why was she enmeshed? Why was she, those kind of things. So we'll be doing some things on that. But of course, the best thing that I always get is when my own daughter, Dominique, calls me and says, Mom, you got to watch this program because this lady has mommy issues. You could make a whole episode out of this. And she's always right. And so I was not going to watch this show again. I kind of like this show, just to the premise behind it. Love is Blind. It's kind of become that show where I don't want to watch it, but then I do want to watch it. It's going to be a hot mess. More than half these couples are not going to end up together. But the premise is, you can't, love is love blind. Like, they have to talk to each other in pods. And I've done this before on other episodes where we've discovered, mommy issues and things with these women. But each couple goes in these pods. They can't see what they look like. So love is blind. They fall in love by their personalities, the conversations they have, the feelings that they're getting. She shoots me a text the other day. The new episode was out, new season actually. And she said, you have to watch this season. The girl on there has mommy issues. And of course, now I'm interested. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And this one was interesting because this girl really did have a traumatic home life, way more than mine. Her mom was a drug addict. She had a stepfather that passed away pretty young. I think she had a brother that passed away. Just a lot of trauma. And she had to grow up being very strong. And this is the episode. Did you grow up learning to be resilient because of the way you were raised by your mom? Raising my hand. And so she told this guy I had to be very resilient. I had to be the strong one. I took care of everyone in my family. But here was my question to her, is that necessary now? So she was being extremely strong, very tough, very closed off, huge walls, understandably so, not blaming her for that. So what is this about? Let's dive in. I think that when we're unmothered, we definitely grow up having to figure things out on our own, having to be tough, having to be resilient. And so I think the problem comes is that when we enter into a healthy relationship, which that may take some time because we end up finding guys that we need to take care of and mother ourselves because we fall into that pattern that's comfortable for us. We forget that tenderness from ourselves and from others is actually needed if you want to be in a healthy relationship. We think that we always have to like drive the boat, drive the car, like we have to be in charge of the relationship. No one else is going to save us. No one else has the answers that I have. And so it's up to me, no one else. And that's not necessarily true. Now, I will say, no disrespect, but in my first marriage, I was the driver of the bus. Like I knew that I was going to have to take charge because that husband was kind of laxy-daisy in making decisions. And maybe just his personality, maybe some other things. Not going to get into that. But when I met Mike, Mike was a very take charge guy. He's a firstborn, type A, to the bone. And so he showed up. Like I was being tough. I lived on my own. I was going through this divorce. I was mourning the loss of a child. I was like, I don't need anyone. Like I've gone through all this stuff. Like I don't need a man. And he came into my life and I was pushing him away. I don't need you. I'm resilient. I can take care of myself. And he was like, what do you need? Like, do you want me to come over with pizza and beer on a Friday night? I was like, if you want to, I don't care. Like, I don't even know why this guy stayed with me, honestly. And he showed up and I was like, nobody's ever shown up for me. And there's a really hard place to be when you grow up being resilient. The trust factor is really high. And so one of the things that stood out to me when the couple of Love is Blind were talking is how they quickly found out each other's attachment styles. Madison, who was the girl, was an avoidant, and the guy she was talking to was an anxious attachment. Those two things together, I'm like, I don't think those things match, but on paper it looks disastrous. And it also brought up some red flags for him because he's a talker. He's anxious. He wants to solve problems. He wants to like figure things out. And she's like, the wall's going up and I'm just going to walk away. That was me for a long time. I'm like, I'm not going to talk about, I don't want to argue because I've heard fights my whole life and I'm not going to scream and yell at you. That's not my style. And so the opposite of that was, I thought, well, I just won't talk about it at all. Just pretend it didn't happen because I just want to move on. Neither one of those are good things. Like I needed to, yes, stay calm and maybe take a break, but I also needed to come back and discuss it so that we could figure out what went wrong here so that we can not do that again. So he was worried, this guy on Love is Blind, he told her if she basically walked away when things got hard, he was really worried about that. He actually used the word fearful. He said, I'm really afraid of you just leaving when things get hard. And that's not the kind of relationship I want. And so he really, really liked this girl, but he was right in looking at because she didn't appease that and say, well, I can work on that. Or it was just like, this is who I am. This is what I do, which showed me, and I think she had gone to therapies and stuff, but there was still a lot of stuff. You could see there was a lot of things, rightfully so. She's had a really, really hard life. So it takes time. And also it has to take the right person. And it kind of worried me when I heard him use the word fearful, because I thought, well, this guy is not going to know how to handle her. I will say in the beginning, Mike did not know how to handle me when I would go through these kind of mini depressions or shutdown moments. It was really hard for him to understand because he wanted to fix it. That was his bent in his personality. I had to teach him, you need to give me a minute. You got to give me a minute to like process what's going on so that I can come back and talk about it in a more adult manner. Since we're not yeller screamers, I also don't want to be ignoring things. And so we worked through that over years. This isn't Love is Blind. We weren't in the pods and going like, okay, let's do XYZ and then let's get married in 4 weeks. It'll be great. Everyone does it. No, it took us years to like learn our personality styles, because also he had some things too. And I had to learn his personality styles and his way of when he would get angry and how he handled things. And so there was a lot of communication going on between these rough patches. So it can be done. You know, you don't have to. Mike came from a very different family background than I did. On paper, it looks disastrous for us. Like, how in the world this is never going to work? We've been together 40 years. It works, but it works because we truly loved each other enough to dig into the hard things and talk about and talk and talk and talk. We communicated so much in 4 years before we got married. It was like a lot of issues had to come to pass. There was one little breakup we did in the middle of that, and then we got back together and we're like, we're good, we're solid. We had to go through those hard patches. So I don't think it's just like be tough and go through life and then go on some show and think like, well, maybe it's just because I fall for the cute guy all the time or the bad boy or whatever. I'll just do this now in the pods. It's a lot more. That's a good start, is to go in a pod and not look at somebody physically, but like get to know them. But it takes years and years and years to get to know somebody's, all their little innuendos, all the things that make you crazy, that you still love them, like chomping their cereal. Oh, wait, I digress. We're not about that. But I think that, you know, there was a wall from the very beginning, because there's also a fatalistic attitude when you are super resilient, is that you feel like nobody's ever going to understand you. And that's what I kind of picked up on from Madison, is that she was almost taunting all these guys like, you're not going to get me. I am so unusual. No one's going to understand me. And then I'm going to prove myself right. But then at the end of the day, she ended up with nobody, because it's very hard for her to let people in. And I understand that. So being transparent in my own life, you know, when I tried to have someone be strong for me, they failed miserably. And so I ended up being the strong one again. And it took me years to unwind those truth narratives that I was the only one that could take care of me. I was the only one that could trust myself. I couldn't trust anybody else. I couldn't let anyone in. And so where does that leave us? Do we have to be the strong, resilient one all the time? Or is this just a protection ploy to never get disappointed or hurt by someone else? So some things to remember is that self-protection works on occasion. You can't be driving the bus all the time, especially in a relationship. Or you can't shut down and just run away and pretend your problems don't exist and that they'll go away if you ignore them. We have learned those bad habits because we have done that. We have jumped in and saved our moms. We've jumped in and saved the family. We jump in and we save our siblings. Like, we jump in and we take care of everything. This became so apparent to me when last year, all my family, the rest of my family members have passed except for my sister. It was the first time that I was like, oh, I don't need to take care of anyone else. And that was like a hard lesson and a very sad thing to realize, that I felt like I had to drive the bus in this whole family dynamic because everyone was just a mess and dependent on me, especially my parents. And it was a heavy burden to take on, and it wasn't my responsibility to hold. And so letting that go and not having a choice to let it go was taken away from me. Like, they were taken from this earth, and that broke me down. It was like, I can just be. I don't need to worry about anyone else ever again. Like they're gone. Of course, I worry about my sister and love my sister, but my sister is really good and independent too. And she doesn't ask a lot from me at this point in her life. And so, we have finally more of a sister kind of relationship instead of help me, save me. But those things had happened throughout the years. So, of course, you develop this I have to be resilient. I have to be the strong one in my family because everybody's depending on that and they're all a mess. But in the meantime, I'm a mess too. Like, I can't do all this stuff, it's not my responsibility. And so, it's just time to shed some of those layers. So if I could meet with this girl, that's what I would tell her is like, you need to break down some of that toughness, some of that resilience and thinking that you need to drive the bus all the time. And also you can't walk away when things get hard. You have to dig in, and being weak it's a strength. It's not a weakness. Being weak to let someone else hold you for a bit and take over is not bad if it's done in the right setting. So can you be vulnerable in relationships and still be strong? I say absolutely, but you must develop trust in your partner. You have to believe that someone's not going to walk away when it gets complicated or hard. You have to know that that partner that's with you is with you through good, bad, middle, all of it. That's what I found in Mike. Every time I tried to push him away, he was like, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You can say what you need to say. Because there was times when we had really good times and then the wall would come up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I truly didn't even want a relationship after going through this bad marriage and losing a child. I was done. Like I was okay being single for the rest of my life. Now, truly, if you ask me that in my heart of hearts, of course I wasn't happy thinking that I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. But did I feel like that was my plot in life? Yeah. I was like, well, I messed everything up. So I think I just need to be single and just mingle and leave it at that. But God had other plans. He was like, no, there was huge mistakes made along the way. You didn't do this right. But guess what? I got a plan for you. And you're going to find me. And you're going to love me. And you're going to follow my plan instead of your own. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure about that either. But okay, let's go. And so little by little, my heart started changing. I started becoming more vulnerable. I started trusting because Mike kept showing up. I could trust him because he proved to me that I could trust him. And the walls started coming down and I didn't have to be as resilient anymore. It's not your job to control everything that happens. Letting go and relaxing into your life means that you have to understand why all of this feels so hard in the first place. Looking back at our history says so much of what we bring into a relationship. Make sure that you don't let someone try to fix you, but instead allows you to let them listen, let them watch your habits, and see if they can come alongside and ask if you need help or if there's something that is needed. The guy on this show wanted to fix the problems that she had, but she actually just needed to feel safe. And when you feel safe, you don't have to be as strong. So some little tidbits, things that I've learned is that find ways to pause and survey the situation before you feel the need to run and take over and take control. This is something as resilient women, we just want to jump in, take control, fix it, make it right. Like no one else can do it the way we can do it in the time we can do it. Like we have big egos. It's not a good thing. Don't jump into relationships that feel good for the moment that you haven't taken time to see if they're actually compatible emotionally. You need to make sure this person understands you come from big triggers, big traumas. it's going to take time. Like there's a lot of unsaid and unmet needs in us that they need to break down and see if this is really something, the kind of relationship they want to be in. We're hard pressed. Like we have a lot of unsaid rules and regulations and things that we do that we just think like, this is just the way it is. That's how I got to survive. And, it takes us time to break those down and be like, hey, I don't need to be that resilient. As always, communication is key. It also helps you understand the triggers in someone else. So be kind and gentle when you're walking them through this. And there's nothing wrong with being strong, but don't ever think that you're the only one that can take care of yourself. It's really nice when someone else can come along and you can fall into their arms and say, I feel so weak right now. I just feel exhausted. I feel whatever it is. And they can say, I got you. One of the most loving things my husband does is that when I'm just not feeling good, maybe like coming on with a cold or just emotionally I'm not feeling good, I'll go in my room and I'll just pull the covers up over my head and he'll gently open the door and he's like, hey, do you need anything? Do you want me to bring you some hot tea? And I'm like, no, I just need quiet right now. And he's like, okay. And you could see the sadness in his eyes because he really wants to fix it. He really wants to help. He's like, let me bring you something. It'll make me feel better. But he understands that I just need some time. He'll come back like in an hour and check on me. There is a safety there that I feel with him that I feel with no other person. He knows there are times if I'm just not feeling good at all, he will bring me that hot tea. What kind of tea? Do you want some honey in it? What kind do you want? He'll bring it to me. He'll make me soup with crackers with butter on them, the saltine kind. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful act of love, and it's with gentleness and calmness. Even when I don't know what I'm feeling, he's like, I got you. Don't worry. Like, you're having a moment. You'll get back to being you. There's just a trust in that feels so good. And that is why even the things that make me crazy with him, he's my best friend and he's the person I trust with my life. And that says a lot. You have to have a person that you trust with your life. Do you have to be the strong one? Sometimes. But you don't have to be the strong one all the time. So find those relationships that give you peace, that give you trust, that give you love. And know that those are exactly the ones that God's bringing into your life. Don't ignore those and run away from the ones who ignore your feelings, don't care, expect you to be tough all the time. Those are not good relationships. Obviously, if you're married, you got to work through that. I'm not telling you to leave that. But I'm talking to the single girls, if you're in some kind of a relationship where you're like, well, we've been together forever, but he doesn't really fulfill my needs. He doesn't really understand when I'm feeling like XYZ. It's time to have a conversation about that, or it's time to walk away because that may not be your person. Be very clear about who you hitch your train to. Do not just, man, I'm talking like an old lady today. Hitch your train. Hit your caboose. Don't hook up with somebody or stay with someone or commit to someone who really doesn't get who you are and actually doesn't care. Make sure you find somebody who really respects, understands, and wants to understand and be in it for the long haul with you with love and trust. I'm so, so passionate about that because I've done it the wrong way and I've done it the right way. And I'm telling you, it's a beautiful thing when you could be with somebody for 40 years and still say, he's my best friend and I can be weak and he can be strong and vice versa. We do it together at times when we need it. Not one of us has to be one or the other all the time. So that is this time's episode. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll be coming back with some other things. Like I said, we're going to be diving into the different kinds of personalities of the toxic mothers and why they are the way they are and why we react to them the way we do. And we're going to be having some guest speakers on. It's going to be great. Until next time, I will see you later, peeps. Bye.